All right. The goal of this session is to let's build out the slide deck for this course. So presentation layer 1. All right. So overview of accounting. So high level overview. I'm thinking through having different layers of content. So I'm trying to imagine the persona of the person who I'm targeting with this. All right, we're going to start with level 1 grammar. All right. So we need to, we'll start with just the basics of trying to decide if I'm trying to imagine what the final product, how it's conveyed, whether it's a whole bunch of shorts, because one of the things people are going to want to do is get answers to questions. And then let's say the other side of the spectrum would be people wanting to follow a course. Like, okay, I'm going to parallel path this with my course in school, and this is going to help augment my understanding and kind of go in order with it. And say in the middle there is people want to, they'll go to certain parts of the video to find certain sections that expound. And I'm trying to think what to target right now. I guess if we build it as if it's a course, then you can grab shorts out of it. So at the end, with each of these things, it ends with exercises. So maybe I just create the different levels, graphics, and yeah. I think in that case, is PowerPoint the way? You know, if I turn it to a slide like this, I believe I can annotate it. Yeah. So down here I can. Okay. All right. So this is going to be level 1 grammar. The graphic. I'm going to just steal a graphic I had created before and bring that in. Let's see if this is going to let me copy and paste across environments. Moment of truth. Whew, yes. Cool. It's a picture. Doesn't give me the different. That's rough. Okay. Well, we can start with, all right. Nah. We're gonna have to go from scratch. So, okay. So, this is level 1 accounting equation game. and so it's, come on, assets, liabilities, equity. All right, so level 1. I need to somehow be able to show um do I want to show it? Maybe I'll do it this way. Is that how I want to do it? Trying to figure out if you guys can hear people in the next room screaming. Okay. So if we call this level 1 boxes, I'm wondering if you start this way. So step one, can you understand this board? And do you understand what the terms are? So if I said, all right, what is cash? Where does it go? Where does a loan go? So it looks like, basic vocab needs to happen. So all right, step one, understand basic vocab. So assets, liabilities, equity. So an asset, let's see what the book says. All right. Asset. Blam. So, if we want to say an asset is a resource, owned redundant, a resource with economic value owned by the company. So, how do we really drive home what an asset is as opposed to a liability and equity? The book will tell you, all right, you think of assets, and then, this is all about who has claim to them. I feel like that's kind of wonky. And it makes you think that there's some kind of like tracing between them, and that's not necessarily true. So, really, an asset, like what's the real substance of what an asset is? I mean, it's a thing. It's a thing. Something has value. Meaning provides benefit. I wanna, what? How do we get deep on what an asset is? as opposed to something that's not an asset. So it needs to be owned by the company. So here, I'm going to say, give me a few examples of things that are and are not assets to help illustrate the core properties of an asset. So here's what Grok said. He just gave examples. Okay, I like the idea of skills. So maybe it is you kind of help understand what things are by looking at them as a whole. So like assets, liabilities. So it's kind of like so asset, liability, equity, revenue, expense. All right, sorry, I got a phone call. All right, so we're getting into what these things are. So where was that sentence? Here's some examples. So I want to show how these examples provide economic value. Inventory, generate future. What the heck? But then, okay, if you're thinking about inventory, for example, it's something, our definition is resource with economic value. Inventory has economic value because it will translate into revenue in the future. But what is revenue? How do you I almost want to say revenue is realization of economic value. So, it makes equity increase. So, I'm thinking to really get to the crux of revenue, you can think of, let's say, inventory that goes up in value while you're holding it. I think I want to be able to describe position versus direction, or position versus change. Because a lot of what, when people are thinking about these concepts, they define it by how it's applied in common practice rather than what the real substance of it is. And there's this idea that what accounting really is telling a story of a business. You're explaining two things. So it's really a description of it's talking about, you're saying you're talking about the beginning position of something and then the current position. So the prior position and the current position. And you're saying how much did it change? And then, so it's about conveying that information. So, and you're doing that through, let's call it a statement of position and a statement of change. So, the statement position will show I started at A and then I ended at B and change in between. So when you're telling a story of business, you're saying, where were they? Where are they? And how did it change? And this increase what is that increase? It's an increase of value. So this other concept that you have to somehow work into here is this what is realized value? This is really talking about the question of like, oh, you didn't lose money until you sell, or something like a paper profit. Like, oh, I've got this thing, this crypto or this Pokemon card or something that is worth this. And you'll talk as if you have this realized gain or this, increase in position, even though you haven't sold it. So it's, you're talking about it in terms of its market value. That's not realized gain yet. And kind of like, okay, I have something that decreased in value. I haven't realized the loss until I sell it. You don't realize something until you decide to. Maybe a way of saying that is you can realize something when you have a high confidence that you could realize it. Um, So the economic substance of transactions is a word that. What is the economic substance of a transaction? And then what's the other way I said it? Like, can be realized. So these are things that I want to come back to. Also, the examples I thought of as like, oh, come on. You don't lose money if you don't sell. Um, So, all this realization principle, we really need to dive deep into that because that's the essence of what this changes. Now, is this an accurate way to say it? Because there's the concept of realization and recognition, which, realization represents the economic substance changing. Recognition is whether you put it in your story. So, So, You're telling a story and you're saying, I'm starting at this position and my economic substance, the value, my position changed. And so here's the current position. And the change in position is how much of change in economic substance. I like this sentence. Okay, so all right, so kind of really need to dive into what the concept of realized value is, because what's happening here is revenue is realization So um hmm So it's an important distinction. I've been saying it kind of incorrectly. This change this change in position trying to decide how deep to unpack it, because in reality we could be talking about the change in position of total assets or equity. And then it needs to be the assets. And I'm trying to decide if I am cool talking about liabilities and equities as as a distribution preference. Because usually the way it works is these represent where those assets would go if it liquidated. Like if all the assets in the company were to be kind of liquidated, they would pay the liabilities and then go to the owners. That's one way to think about what this side of the equation is its preference or claim over the assets. And when we're talking about this story of a business, we're talking about the position of it changing, meaning the value. I guess I could throw some axes in here. The value of the assets, how they change. But the statement of change, is really talking about how much of that value increased for the owners. What do I want to describe it as? The total asset or equity value? Let's see what AI says. Okay. Well, it's kind of saying that it's all of it, collectively talking about position as, it's the position of each of the squares. But I don't really like that because it's hard to reconcile the statement of change. It wants to define, the way I did. Okay, so let's say it this way. So, I mean, the answer is that it's The story of a business is how the asset value has changed over time, and then how much of that change, that increase in value, do the owners get to keep? So, the question is, does it make it confusing if you thereby point out so? So, the whole thing is the total realized change in value, and then oh my gosh, the keystrokes. In a Windows machine, the keystrokes are different than an Apple, and I usually do this on one and not the other. So, in essence, telling the story of a business is broken down into these pieces. It's showing the total asset value at point A, and the position at point B, which is its asset value, and then explaining what's the total realized change and how much of that is for the benefit of the owners and how much of that change is owed to creditors. Now, you might beg the question, well, what happens if it's a decrease in value? In theory, could be something like this. Um, it could be that there's change um, yeah, that's complicated to try and explain without having a solid understanding. But let's think about it. If the change in total assets went down by this amount, the change in the owners could have decreased by more than that, depending on if assets increased from borrowing money. Kind of like this way of looking at it. So, but in order to have this conversation, there is this whole concept of what it means to realize a change in value. So, need to create a bunch of examples. Of this. All right, so then when we come to, all right, what do these vocab words means? Assets, these are resources with economic value owned by the company. Liability, let's get a definition from Grok. Expected outflow of resources. So we could start by saying that when looking at a business, you look at this business, these business-owned assets, where are they going to go? So all of the assets that a business owns, where are they going to go? They're either going to be let's call it planted for growing. So they're going to be like invested or used in operations. So I'm just going to say they're going to be planted to grow more. Like seeds planted for growing. Or they're going to go to one of two, let's call it the stakeholders. So there's creditors and owners. So what's the difference between a creditor and an owner? I'm going to ask Grok to define it. Okay, I like this part of the definition. So an owner's inside, a creditor's external. And it really is about risk. And then I think, rank in terms of claims. I think that's another thing that we need to really hit on is claim rank. So creditors are first in line. So if you really hone in on understanding creditors and owners, owners are last in line. They get everything that's left over after creditors. They control the assets and get the upside. So understanding the difference between owners and creditors is important, because then when you're telling the story, it's about, okay, how did, hold on. Okay. So it's, the essence of it is, it's understanding realization and creditors and owners and assets. So it's what is an asset? What's economic value? Maybe kind of what's that economic? How do you really understand that? So you'd start off by saying, telling the story of a business is just the simple version. It's about saying, where was the position before and where's the position now? And then being able to describe the concept of realized change in value. So, okay, what is an asset? What is realization? What is an asset? What is realization? And then it's saying, okay, we need to understand the idea of creditors and owners. And a creditor and an owner, understanding those and understanding how assets, kind of the rank in asset claims. Then you can understand how, all right, statement of position is explaining this story, and then statement of change is describing this story. If you wanted to get crazy, then So understanding all those concepts can help you define these vocab words. I could just call this one So I need to decide if it's better to ditch that and just say it like this. So if you can understand these terms, then okay, the goal is to understand that picture. Is I guess yeah, let's just say that. So this is the level 1 picture. Is the goal here is if I say $10 that there's $10 in cash, where where is that? So, where's clip art? All right. If there's treasure, where would that go? Well, it's an asset, something of value. So that's where so cash. If you owed somebody money, so a loan, IOU. So if you have an IOU to somebody of $10, where's that? Right here. If you have the owners put in $100, let's call it stock. The owners have stock in the company because they put in money. It goes right there. Let's say someone performs a service and earns money. That goes right here. All right, so what does this all bring it back to this? These are descriptions of position. Like what exists and where it would go. So, in here I have this level 1. It feels like I need to get into the balance equation immediately. Okay, so very quickly, the concept needs to be explained. That if there's anything on one side of the line, there needs to be something of equal value on the other. So, for example, let's say there's a business that has cash. Where did it come from? Let's say the owner put it in. That means that you're showing, hey, the business has cash and the owner has claim to it. Whereas if the money was borrowed, it would be written like that, where it's, we have this cash, but the creditors have claim. Like if it was liquidated out of the company, creditors get it. So anytime a story is being told, anytime there's something on one side, there has to be equal amount of value on the other. Like it's impossible to have cash and not have it defined where it would go, where you liquidate. One of the ways you can also think about it, order of assets entering a company. and the order of assets leaving a company. So let's I forget why I was going with that. It feels like naturally I'm gonna need a graphic where it's gonna so owners put money in first, and then creditors, then you earn money coming out the way assets go, pay costs, pay creditors, then owners. So owners put stuff in first, then creditors, and when it comes out, creditors get it first. So this is that priority of claim concept. Okay, so if you can understand all of these vocab words, and then you need to understand this center line. Everything on the left has to equal everything on the right. Okay, so then a whole bunch of transaction analysis, or just examples of activity. So I need to think of some examples of, okay, cash comes in, where did it come from? Well, it needs to come from owners first. Then more cash comes in, it was borrowed. So I need to come up with some numbers. So then let's say money. Oh. Then let's say money is earned. So concept of balance, and then examples showing that every time something happens where assets change, there needs to be a corresponding thing on the other side. So you can look at this and say, okay, assets went from 0 to 3. Let's say each one's worth 1. And then, so we have 3 assets. So we're at 3. And then how much of that is claimed by creditors and how much is claimed by owners? Well, 1 is claimed by creditors. 2 is claimed by owners.